On another matter now, and a person our viewers likely won't know, her name is Bethany Randall. She represents Australia in Ramallah in the West Bank on behalf of the Department of Foreign Affairs, and she's set to have her visa revoked by Israel, Greg.
Yeah, so I think this is a monumental failure by the Albanese government. I mean, what a pack of amateurs they are. We now have no influence at all with Israel, zero influence. All these silly little gestures we've taken have resulted in our having zero influence with our traditional ally, Israel. I've been to Palestinian territories a number of times. The Australian diplomats accredited there do a very good job. They're very capable people. They shouldn't be the meat in this sandwich. But the Albanese government is now getting very cavalier about denying visas to Israelis. The last guy they've denied is a guy whose views I don't agree with, but he doesn't incite violence or anything as far as we know. And ultimately the Israelis said, well, if you keep spitting at us every week, your diplomats can go home from the Palestinian territories. Now, I think that's an overreaction by the Israelis. I think it's very, very regrettable. But you'd have to say, if the Albanese government, if this is the outcome of their efforts at peacemaking, so much so now that they can't even have a dialogue with Israel. And remember, we have intimate intelligence sharing relationships with Israel. Until 5 minutes ago, we described ourselves as an ally of Israel. The Albanese government has sanctioned Israeli politicians. It doesn't do that to Chinese politicians. I think it's a tremendous indictment of the failure of Albanese government diplomacy that it's come to this. We're denying Israeli members of parliament visas to come to Australia, and the Israelis are chucking our diplomats out. Well done. Brilliant, Canberra. Great outcome.
And so when this arrives at the United Nations next month, it is going to be the number one issue. The Prime Minister will deliver his first address. This is the 80th General Assembly. And Greg, in years gone by, we were part of the minority, but happy to be there alongside the United States and others in not recognising a Palestinian territory yet because of various thresholds that hadn't been met. Now we're very much part of the majority, including nations like the UK, Canada, France joining on in recent times as well, Greg.
Yes, and we've thrown our lot in with Cuba and Russia and every North Korea, every dictatorship you can imagine in the world. So, Kieran, it's very difficult to get people to think clearly about this. Recognition is not a sort of a beauty contest or a gold star or something. You recognise a new state when it comes into being. Now, of course, the United Nations has a built-in anti-Israel majority. The African Muslim coalition is anti-Israel and will always vote against Israel. And the United States and her allies have typically stood up against that, stand up for principle. The other thing to remember is that we have absolutely zero influence in the Middle East. So Albanese's talked more about the Middle East than I've ever heard him talk about, Philippines sovereignty as opposed to Chinese incursions in the South China Sea. But whereas we have some influence in the Philippines and the South China Sea, we have no influence at all in the Middle East. So this is completely performative bombast by the Albanese government, and it won't hasten the actual existence of a Palestinian state. You talk about the 140 nations that recognise a Palestinian state. Most of them have recognised such a state for decades. That hasn't resulted in a state coming into being. The state will come into being when Israel and Palestine make an agreement. And now we have got to the position where we have absolutely zero influence with Israel. But, Albanese can perform for the left wing of the Labor Party and the Green voters in the seats that he thinks are important. I think it's a sign that Australian politics is becoming obsessed with issues about which it has no competence, and it is a dereliction of the traditional position of Western solidarity that the Australian government has had, and it's kind of completely meaningless anyway. It won't advance. No Palestinian kid will be better off as a result of this gesture. And what we're getting from the Albanese government increasingly is gesture politics.
Greg Sheridan, great to chat as always. Thanks. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, Kieran.